Biblical Tragic Heroes, Part 5, Solomon.
So what is it?
Yep, so he saw reign over Israel's power, and he was born of high status. So he was expected to go far in life, succeeding his father David in power and in faith. So early on, he was born of a high-class family between Bethesda and David, and he asked God to give him wisdom, which he does. So he becomes a very wise person, and he often makes good decisions. So later in the wisdom, he answered all the questions, and it was not hard to explain.
Yeah, so basically, you can see a contrast here. So even though Solomon was born of David White's Bathsheba, which he had turned in sin, he was still beloved by God from birth because he realized that Solomon had not done anything wrong. And then so when Solomon finally becomes king, God grants him one gift and a wish. And he asks God to give him wisdom so that he can rule over Israel with greater wisdom. And notice the contrast here. Adam tried to take wisdom by eating the fruit, but Solomon asked God for wisdom, and he was pleased with this, and so he gave it. Right there, you can see there's a very famous story. So the king of Israel also served as a judge in legal cases. So there are two women there. They're both widows. They've lost their husbands, and they had one child each. So one of the women right there on the side, she's lost her child. But the other woman in blue, she still has her child left. Now, this happens overnight. One of the children's found dead, and the woman in red, she finds him first, and so she switches the babies. She's like, I'm so sorry, your son is the one that died, but she doesn't believe her because she had been taking very good care. And then so they eventually bring the baby before Solomon to find out which one is going to take control of the baby. So this is what he does. You can see there's a sword there that the man is holding. He says, cut the baby in half, and the women can each have one half. And then so the woman in red is like, fine, if I can't have it, then she can't have it either. But the one in blue, she's like, no, just give the baby to her so that it can live. And then so he knows, obviously the woman in blue is the mother because she cares more about having the son live than having it to herself. So this is an example of his wisdom.
So Solomon, establishes the empire and builds many temples. So with this greatness, he was a widely accepted monarch, and the Queen of Sheba even visited him to seek his wisdom in how he had it all.
Yeah, Sheba was a very powerful king at the time, but even the queen was like, wow, I've heard great stories about this man. I should see if he's actually been given that wisdom.
Yeah. So then later with his power, he has over 700 wives that he's accumulated, but this angered God, even though it was technically acceptable under the law, because his heart was in the right place. It was straying away from God and towards greed and lust.
Yeah, you can see this with the two greatest projects that Solomon builds. He is charged with building the first temple in Jerusalem, which is that one on the right. David wanted to do this, but God said that he was a man of war. He wanted a man of peace to build this temple. So basically, since David had been fighting all his life, God did not want him to build the temple. So Solomon, who didn't have any war at this point, because again, his reign was very blessed up to this point, and everyone had lived in peace. So he's the one that actually builds the temple. But then afterwards, he builds himself a great palace. And the palace is bigger and larger than the temple. He spent more money, more time and effort building his palace than basically the palace of God, which is right on the right. And so that sort of tells us about his priorities. He's trying to make everyone in awe of his great palace. He's trying to exhibit his wealth. So he was given prosperity and wisdom. The wisdom is sort of represented by the temple because it was given from God. And his wealth is represented by the palace. And he cares more about his wealth and all that he has than his actual faith. And this is the first mistake that he makes. And afterward is getting his 700 wives, of course. So what is this sin called by believing their importance is better?
Yep, so he was overly prided. So he occupied himself more than those around him. And he often wanted more attention. He seeked it and was always wanted more in life instead of passing on what he learned and sharing the success with those who helped him along the way. So he started on a journey of worship, and he really wanted the public eye with his 700 wives. He wanted to always be seen, and he wants everyone to be talking about him. and this influenced like his decision making heavily. Because when he served God, he preached, not to God. So he was looking for the people's opinion as opposed to God's. So, but he built shrines to other gods, to show. And that God evidently did not like that because he was caring more about those who had no connection to him.
So basically, he didn't care as much about God's approval because he is one of the most prosperous kings in the world at this time. And so he feels like he has the power and the right to do what he wants. And so since at this time, some people were not following God, they were following like all these strange foreign pagan gods, he's like, fine, let's get the people what they want so that, I can get more power. And some of these were his own wives because his wives, some of them were not following God. That right there is a shrine to a pagan god named Molech. I'm not going to really go over the details, but he was a very terrible idol. People would sacrifice babies to Molech. So, and Solomon actually builds this, and so that this angers God greatly.
Oh, so his inevitable downfall is he forgets, he doesn't prioritize God as much, and even though he gave him all he needed, the wisdom and everything that brought him the power.
Yeah, he stopped using that wisdom. He started using his wealth and prosperity, which had come from the wisdom, but he hadn't realized this. He put his more priority over his image and power than on his servitude, which is the real power that he gets. And so his many wives rubbed off on him, and eventually led to someone prioritizing them and their wishes, as well as the people's wishes instead of what God wished. And then so this quote is cut off here, but upon Solomon's death, the quote reads, "And Solomon did what was bad in the eyes of God, and he did not follow God completely, as David his father had done." And so even though David had sinned, and we obviously know this, and he suffered because of it, what we mean completely is not like he only served God, but completely as in his heart was complete. He knew that he was doing all he could, and he was like truly faithful, not just doing it because he like was afraid of God or because he was just doing it for the public. Solomon was faithful originally, but then he turned away from that, and that's what this quote is saying. So here are the pictures. This is Solomon's dream. This is when God appears to him, and Solomon asks for wisdom. That's the case of the two wives and the baby. This here is Solomon writing. So Solomon actually wrote 2 books of the Bible. He did not write his own book, his own biography. He wrote Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, which are 2 books of wisdom, obviously. And he basically lays down rules for life and rules for faith and how to live the best life. But then he actually doesn't follow his own rules. There he is dedicating the temple, which is good, but here he is in his exorbitant wealth. And here's the Queen of Sheba coming to ask him questions about his wisdom. As you can see, here is many wives, and that is one of his wives offering something to a pagan god. You can see that eventually he turns from faith and wisdom to materialism and pride. And this is one of the great turning points, because that's the thing he ends up hearing more about. And so what lesson can we learn?
So when we are tested, it's better to embrace our roots and help the people, or credit the people that brought us to this situation instead of those who had no connection. So they might distract us from what actually matters. And then we should focus on so you shouldn't keep around those who are only with you for your belongings, such as David's many wives, who just wanted from his wealth and riches, and then instead God, who praised him for his wisdom. And then it's grateful. It's better to be grateful for what you have instead of being greedy and wishing for more.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider watching the rest of the videos in this series. Thank you, and goodbye.